Hello, everyone. I'm Beverly Chambers, the founder and CEO of iwanttobeafashionbuyer.com, which I set up with the purpose of being a conduit between fashion retail and young talent. We run a unique 6-month fashion buying and planning program where our students study with us whilst interning 1 or 2 days a week in the buying office of one of our fabulous retail intern partners. Joining me today are 2 of the graduates from last year, Kathy Song and Dulcie Reyes. Kathy's now an assistant planner with luxury brand Sandro, based in Sydney, and Dulcie is an assistant buyer with Australian surf brand City Beach, based in Brisbane. So welcome, Kathy, and welcome, Dulcie.
Hello, welcome everybody as well, and thank you for having us.
So, I'd like to start, Kathy, if I may, because before joining the Fashion Buying and Planning program, you had a really different career, didn't you? As a management accountant, and you're also a member of the CPA. So I thought maybe we could start with, tell us, why the change and what interested you particularly, because you were very clear from the beginning that you wanted to go into merchandise planning. So what was it that really interested you? You're on mute, by the way.
Sorry. Yeah, hello, everyone. So I was a accountant because I studied accounting, and that's what I can do. But when I think about what I'm really passionate about, I think I have passion with fashion. So ideally, I want to work in an industry where I can combine my passion and previous working skill together. So I did a little bit of research, and I think merchandise planning is the right area. So that's why I choose to move to this industry. And I think compared to accounting, merchandise planning also requires creativity, which is like I really like. So being creative in accounting is not a good thing. So, but I think it'll be like a good thing in merchandise planning. Yeah.
Yeah, I think creative accountants usually end up in jail, don't they?
Yes, like or something.
Okay, so and for yourself, Dulcie, you came to our program also from a very different direction. You've got a bachelor in business administration and an MBA. And prior to moving to Australia, you'd worked on the wholesale side of fashion. So what drove you to want to move into buying?
Well, thanks for asking. Well, as you said, like my experience in wholesale fashion provide me, with a strong foundation of the industry, I think, regarding processes and production, most of it. However, I was always like drawn to the creative and the customer facing aspects, of the fashion industry. Um, and also, my decision to move into buying was driven, by my desire to combine my business administration skills and experience, and also, as Kathy mentioned, my passion for fashion as well. I wanted to be, part of the process that brought products from concept, from trends, concepts into real life products, and yeah, just being part of the processes. And I think that also my experience in wholesale will give give me a good perspective and a unique way of dealing with things in the buying process. So yeah, I just was intrigued, by the challenges and opportunity that this industry has for us here in Australia, specifically because I feel like Australian brands and designers are growing in popularity in the world. So yeah, it's just gives you a sense of expansion and potential, um, of the fashion industry, and so that's why probably.
Okay. And let's just take you back to the starting of the program that you did with us. And Dulcie, you did your internship with Michael Hill in Brisbane. can you tell me about your time there, what you got involved in, what you did, that kind of thing?
Yeah, sure. So I feel like the internship was a valuable experience for me because it gives you really, hands-on exposure of the job, right, and of the skills that you have to develop, in this industry. I feel like the course and the internship, helped me comprehend. The environment, the changing environment that all buyers and planners deal with it, every week. I got the opportunity, to participate in range review meetings, presentations, supplier meetings as well, and also in meetings that were in like internal meetings where they discuss, the decision making into selecting one product instead of the other, based on data analysis, of course, and forecasting trends and all of these things. I got to work really close with the whole team, buying and planning, and this company. Um, and but but really you really get along with other departments, right, from operations, to marketing. So I feel like it's a really good opportunity, or was a really good opportunity for me, in order to develop and understand the skills that I need, for the job, basically.
And obviously with Michael Hill, they're very different. I remember when I went to visit you there, I'd never been somewhere where all their stock was was there as well, because it's all so small. So I mean, there's literally the disaster sample room is a safe, isn't it? It's like a huge safe that you sort of walk
Yeah,
in.
yeah. It's basically, there were basically two safes, like the DC safe, which is basically a massive safe. I think they moved now to a new location whatsoever, but yeah, and even the samples all had to be in the safe because they're valuable samples, right? They're made of gold, silver. So yeah, definitely it was. A lot of security involved in this company because of the product that they that they sell, of course. But um but yeah, every company is different, and as if I have to compare where I'm working now, the DC here is massive, right? Because we have all sort of products from boards, to swimwear and jewelry as well. So it's kind of a big contrast, but also like it gives you an idea that you know every company is different, and every company has its own ways to perform. But yeah, it's just matter of what brand is it, and how are you going to to deal with the trends and all of the things.
Okay. And Kathy, you had a very different experience. You were in the kids wear department of Best and Less. So um, you know, how was that? How did you find, your time there?
I find this really helpful, and it's very lucky to working there for like 6 months. Um, I think the team was like well structured, and I got an opportunity to work with senior merchandise planner closely. But at the same time, I got time to communicate with buyers and allocators in the team, and I'm able to join their weekly meeting and season meetings, etc. I think it's helped me to apply the theoretical knowledge learned in the class to the reality, like real world. So I think that's really helpful.
Okay. And I know that you were very fortunate with the placement that you got. They did spend a lot of time actually really sort of, I mean, I remember one, you were doing an analysis that they were allowing you to do, to actually base decisions on. So you did get quite a lot of hands-on experience, didn't you?
Yes, yeah. So I work with the senior merchandise planner. She's very experienced, and she basically showed me every like Excel spreadsheet she's working on, and she want me to try to get some work done for her, and she will review and get back to me, which I really appreciate it.
Yeah, because it's really like it was real stuff that she was giving you to do that actually, but obviously supervising you so that you weren't going to cost the business millions of dollars by making the wrong decision. But but actually be able to analysis and then report that back to her, which is really great practical experience.
Yes, that's right. And actually, it's they're spending like extra time to train me to show me. So that's really yeah, very kind of them.
So let's move on now. You've and talk about your current role. So Dulcie, you said you're at City Beach, and you mentioned a little bit about it, course. Do you want to just talk to us about, what your role involves, who you're working with? Just maybe describe a sort of typical week. What does a week in your life at City Beach look like?
Okay, well, yeah, I'm an assistant buyer for jewelry, sunnies, and watches at the moment here at City Beach. Um, and I will say that every week is different. Some weeks you will have, less amount of work than others, but it all comes down, um, basically to assist the buyer in creating reports, analyzing the data of the bestsellers, the budgeting as well. Just trying to manage the right amount of stock that we have to have, each month. Um, and creating products as well, working with the supplier for new developments. Right now we're working already for delivering products for April next year or in May next year. So yeah, we're just in this process of creating samples, approving samples, and taking our time to decide the quantity, that we are going to apply for each style that we are going to allocate for those months. Um, and basically, the company runs. They call it splits, but basically it's the allocation of stock twice a week. So and it's the buyer's responsibility, at least in this company, to run that allocation for stores and online. So it's quite interesting because you actually get to see, right, what products are performing twice a week, as I'm saying. Like you get to see the sales, in real life within the week, and based on that, you allocate as you go on. So yeah, I will say that that's most of the job that I do. Of course, listening with suppliers, following up orders, right, that may be late or they're ahead of time as well. Um, and basically, yeah, just assisting the buyer, for my categories and everything that she needs, in terms of, as I mentioned, reports and allocation, and even sample management as well. We receive, a lot of new styles every week from the DC to get shipped for, for the website, to get the images uploaded in the website. So that's part of as well of the job that I do. Just managing all the samples that come in, and then taking to the studio, and then retrieving back to the DC as well. So it's a lot of fun. It's really. It's a really fast-paced environment and changing, every week. But I think that that's what I like, to be able to adapt, so quickly um, to basically all the trends that are coming, and the new products that we have to deliver to our customers. So yeah, I will say that that will be it.
So what season are you working on now?
So the company doesn't precisely work by season. We kind of work like month by month, uh, but we can say that we're working on April and May. So it's basically summer, right? Kind of thing. Um, so yeah, we're working basically like 5 or 6 months in advance, to deliver the right products at that, given months.
And I think one of the things that people often don't understand is that you're working on that as a development cycle,
Yeah,
but you're also working on stuff that's earlier, that's in its production or pre-production stage, and then you're also managing what's currently selling.
exactly. So that's part of the tricky part, right? Because if you have something similar that is not selling now, right, for future months or future seasons, then you may as well reconsider if you wanted to bring it back, even if it's a slightly different color or slightly different material or whatever. You want to reconsider if it's worth it, or if you just want to cancel it, and if you can cancel it, right, because you may as well put the order already with the supplier. So yeah, you have to balance whatever you have today, what is selling today, with the things that you want to bring in the future. So it's kind of um, hectic, I will say, that part, but it also provides you with the creativity, and open your mind to explore, different things as well.
So, in terms of like what you're describing, it seems like you have to be somebody who is able to manage a lot of conflicting priorities. You're not
Yes.
somebody who does I'll do this, I'll finish this, then I'll start that. It's very much this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. Is that how you would say?
Yeah, it's exactly that. But because we are only humans at the end of the day, I will
Networking,
say
yeah.
that you have to, balance, um, uh, what's happening now. I will say that it's more important now because you have to react now. Um, but having that sense for the future and being able, to comprehend what's happening in the market is really, really important, because if not, you will be delivering the same products, you know. And especially for the company that I work on, trends is really important. Like, is very, very important. So you have to be able to you know be as creative as possible, but also as focused, and concentrate on what you are doing. Because yeah, instead of sending, I don't know, two units to a store, you may be sending 20, and it's have to focus a lot on what you're doing in order to not make mistakes, right?
Yeah, so it's an attention to detail that you need to have as well,
Yeah.
and then it's attention to detail to 5 or 6 different things happening at once.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You have to concentrate and have very, very, you have to be very careful, right, for what you're doing, but at the same time have the confidence, right, of that you are not alone as well in the company. And of course, you have people that you can ask, and the team is also, part of the great experience that you're going to have in a company. So yeah, just being able to ask, your teammate is really important as well.
So with City Beach,
Sharing the communication.
where do they find their trends? Where do they get in their ideas for what's the next trend?
So I will say that because we are not, a leading company in terms of bringing being the first one in come with a trend. I will say that we base it on of what's happening in the market at the moment. Um, we are not as fashion, right? But we try to deliver, the right products for the young people in Australia. So is yeah, it's kind of dynamic, and but lots of fun, I will say.
And Kathy, let's move over to you now. So you are now an assistant planner at Sandro. So what does your role involve, and what sort of tasks do you get involved in on a day-to-day basis?
So mainly my work involves like reporting, and then also work closely with other departments like retail, e-com, or marketing, etc., and of course buying. Um, so my typically week, like every day we have ad hoc requirement. But if we're only talking about regular like schedule, like mainly Monday and Tuesday, we will focus on reporting. Like Monday, we will need to review like the sales performance for the past week, and then Tuesday, we will based on the performance we're doing like reorder, we're doing replenishment, and we're doing that actual thing to make the stock was delivered to the store on time and at the right level. And then we may have another like ad hoc replenishment during like the next few days, just depends on the request from the store. And the meantime, I will need to doing the reporting as per the request from head office or other department. Yeah.
And you report into a planner?
I report to the planning manager. So yeah, so I'm working with her closely. We take care of women's wear and menswear. And currently we are in fall winter season 23, which is a bit different because it's a French company. So
Yeah.
we have to follow their seasonality, which is reverse to Australian season. So we're actually in fall winter.
All right. So you're selling full winter, and then in terms of how far in advance are you planning your product for, what's coming next?
Usually 6 months in advance. So currently, similar to what Georgie just said, it's a very busy period at the moment because we are currently in fall winter season, but summer season is coming, and we also need to planning for the fall winter 24 season in advance. Yeah, so it's kind of like three season happening at the same time. Yeah.
And with Sandra, because it's a French company, you're not developing, or the buyers are not developing product just for the Australian market, are they?
Uh, yes and no. They will customize or they will listen to our local feedback and try to do some adjustment. Yeah, yeah. But it really depends on, the head office, like the French decision. Yeah.
And what is it like that you love most now about working in planning? Now you've retrained and now you're doing it. What is it that you go, this is what gives me the buzz every day?
Probably I was able to make strategic decision to affect sales and profitability. I'll say, because you receive feedback from customer from store, that's one aspect. And then you can see the sales, the data, the reporting, and they tell you another story. And then you were able to combine them together, make analysis, and make a decision or advice to the team what we are going to do this week or what are we going to do next season. That excites me. You are actually contribute to the performance of the company. Yeah.
And is that one of your KPIs, the profitability?
Yes. Yeah.
And you know all about profitability because you're an
Definitely.
Yeah. That's but it's very different. Like, no, it's my KPI. Before it's other people's KPI. I just calculate for them.
quite different, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I didn't ask you actually, Dulcie, what is it that you love most about working in buying now that you're doing it?
Creating the products, I will say, developing the products and seeing the samples. The development process for me is what I like. But you also have to be like strong with numbers as well. Um, So I think that it comes to me with the administrative, side of things as well. So yeah, I love to be able to create products, but also, be analytical about them, like looking at the numbers and comparing what I'm seeing in real life. Is it going to sell, or, is it just not going to perform as I will like, so that's what I definitely love about this. Yeah.
And what do you, how much uh, sort of work and hand in glove work do you do with your counterpart? So for you, Kathy, it would be the people who are working in buying, and for you, Jules, the people who are working in planning. What sort of things do you get involved with the counterpart?
So basically, at least in City Beach, there's no planning department. The buyers do all the allocation and the planning as well for their categories or the departments. So I cannot say I have, a planning side of things because I do both, or well, the buyer and I for our categories work both things. But we do have a lot of, interaction with marketing and e-commerce as well, to see, what's performing well in the website, what's getting the most clicks, things like that. And also with the retail operations, managers and management. That's what we interact the most, I will say.
And I suppose what I would say, what to ask now is, if you were to sort of give somebody advice who might be like you, contemplating a career change, what advice would either of you give to them?
If you were to change your career, I will say that, first of all, getting to know what the industry that you are going into is all about comes first, because if you know that that industry have something, to give to you as well as an individual, I feel like, you will be, happy, and you will be, you will be pleasing with the work that you're doing, in terms of, your life experience, or, your lifestyle. So first of all, get to know, the industry that you want to work on, and then you can, have courses like this one, or, even, in other schools, to get that skill, and to get all the theoretical, aspect of things. So you are confident, when you want to apply for a job that you are not in that industry, right? You can, explain why, right? Instead of just saying, I just want to be part of the aviation, but I don't know anything about planes. So you have to, get to know the industry first, so you can see if it's, right for you, and then get to know, the concepts, the, all the theoretical aspects of things, and the knowledge, and see if that resonates with your life as well, and then you can make a decision, I think.
I think that's really great advice. What would your advice be, Kathy?
Uh, I think first you need to set a goal. Like, what would you want to get if you change your career to this industry? And then once you set a goal, do some research, see if this is actually the right right industry you're working to achieve your goal. And then I think it's not easy to change your career, but also it's not hard as you think.
Yeah.
So you just need to be confident and be persistent, and prepare, like doing research of the industry. And then I think yeah, like then one day you will get the role you want. Yeah.
And
I just want to add, to Kathy's, comment with the persistent thing. Like, I feel like sometimes you will get a lot of no's, right? But the right yes will come, if when you are prepared for it, right? So,
Yes.
yeah, you have to be persistent, as Kathy said. So yeah,
Yes.
that's
I think
very
that
good
you're
advice.
absolutely right. And in whatever you decide to do, you have to be persistent. And I think
Yes.
Yes.
you need, you know, and I think you're right about doing the research. You've done your research, you've got yourself in the position, and then if things don't happen straight away, you can't just go, oh, well, never mind then. You have to actually go, I'll keep going, I'll keep going, I'll keep going. And I know with yourself, because you took a different role, didn't you, at first, before
Yeah.
you got the role into buying. So you went back into a wholesale role and then waited until a great role came up and that was right for you.
Yeah, exactly. Like I got a wholesale job previously to where I'm working at, but yeah, I knew that this is what I wanted to do. So yeah, as Kathy mentioned, just be persistent and don't drop the ball. Everything will come when it has to come. And yeah, it just happened for me that it was like 6 months later, but it could be less. It depends as well of you and your skills, and also the confidence that you have. Um, but if you're persistent and you have well intentions, like good intentions of what you're doing, I think that will reflect on the opportunities that you get.
I think the other thing I would say as well is that actually you need experience to get experience. So you
Mhm.
use your network, develop your network. You know, I'm a big believer in LinkedIn. Go on LinkedIn. You know, when people are commenting, comment, get yourself known, find articles, comment on them, so people get to be familiar with your name. And one of the things I think I said to you too, that when I first started my business, I had something like 260 connections on LinkedIn, and I've now got over 7,000. And that's because I am on every day, 10, 15 minutes a day. Just it's probably the only social media I actually understand how it works. I don't understand. um okay, so what I also want to say is, before we move over, well, I'm going to open up to sort of questions as well in a moment, but if anybody here is, and I don't know, or thinking about joining our program for our next intake, and I know Vanessa, who's in the audience, is actually on the current program. So our next intake is in February 2024. What would you say to them?
Well, yeah, I can go first. I will recommend it 100%. I feel like the internship is the most valuable thing, um, you know, when you want to get in a new industry. In For the program, I feel like it was really complete. It gives you all the theoretical aspects that you need to know about, the fashion industry and the fashion and planning departments. Um, and I feel like the internship gets you, the opportunity just to observe what is happening and not having the actual responsibility, to do the wrong thing or something like that. You get to learn and to gain knowledge just by observing, right? And just by taking notes of what's happening. And you get to also work your intuition as well about, um, people and products and even from the industry. So I 100% recommend it, because it's really an up-to-date course, I will say. And also, you're really experienced, so you have a lot to give, and a lot of advice for the career. So I think that it just offers you valuable networking opportunities at the end of the day. So um, yeah, go for it.
And I think the thing is with the internship as well is it does help to build your confidence.
Yeah,
Then you go in
100%.
and you go, oh, I'm familiar with this. I watched that happen. I've seen this before. You're not just like how can I put it, in your role now where you are expected to make decisions, etc. It's not the rabbit in the headlights because you're going, I don't know what's going on here. I've never heard about this before. You say that
Yeah,
was
yeah, even with the abbreviations, right? Like here they talk, in abbreviations all the time, like in emails, speaking, like every time is just words of the industry, that I think that the course have, like a great foundation as well in terms of that. So as long as know the top elements of the course, I think that that gives you what to say in meetings, or it gives you perspective as well. So yeah, it's recommended 100%.
Have you got anything to add?
I totally agree with what you guys said, and also I think another good thing about internship is like you actually see people in the industry how they works, and you can really think about your decision. Do I really want working in this industry, or you will see am I want like working in buying or planning? You will have like more time opportunity to think about your decision. Yeah.
So let's open it up to questions now. Does anybody have any questions for either Dulce or Kathy? Or if you want to put them in the chat, if you want to put your question in the chat, I'm happy to read them out. Two things in the chat. Okay, so oh, that's really somebody's introducing me to a supplier from Bangladesh. Okay. Very odd. Yeah, okay. Okay. Yeah, not sure. So we've got a question here from Leonie. Are there often part-time positions, and do you find that the hours can be flexible?
So I will say that it will depend on the company, right? But for the most part, they are full-time positions, at least when it comes to buying and planning. But for instance, here we do have, casuals as well. So I think that it will come to the company, because every company will have different policies. But yes, that's my answer, I will say.
Yeah, yeah, same with me. Yeah, most of the buying planning is all full time. Yeah.
I think what I would say is in my career, I've only ever worked with one company where I actually worked 4 days a week, and I think that under four in buying and planning is almost impossible. Although we did have two people on a department who job shared, and they both did 3 days a week, so they both were there on a Wednesday. One did Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, one did Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, so they both shared a Wednesday. And they basically gave them a department that was like a 1.2 people's job, and they did that. But it was a very large organization, and they could cope with that. And I do think that smaller organizations really struggle to be able to do that. And I think the other thing, particularly if you're working in fashion buying, is that not necessarily as an assistant, but as a buyer, you're really expected to do quite a lot of international travel. And I know when my kids were younger, I had twins when we first arrived in Australia, and I went for a job with Target, and the expectation there was to do 4 3-week trips a year. Now it's not as bad now because we've now got technology and you can do these sort of meetings and things like that.
Mhm.
But still, the buyers are probably traveling twice a year to Europe and China, or America and China and whatever. Um, and that sort of travel, and it can be very long hours as well. I would say is that you do have to be I think fairly dedicated. I would say it is quite it's fast paced, it's pressure. You're only as good as last week's sales. It really isn't a
Yesterday sales.
job. It isn't a job for people who probably can't take pressure. I would say that.
Mhm.
Um,
I agree.
Okay, so I've got, would you recommend this internship to someone who's full-time college student, or would it be best to wait for the summer?
Yeah, I will say that it's better to wait, because as a student, you want to, give your full attention to your studies, right? But having said that, you can obviously, apply earlier for the roles and kind of get prepared, get, starting to get like interviews, right? So you kind of practice, you know, during the interviews. But as a full-time student, being a buyer or a planner, unless it's a casual position, um, I feel like it will be too much, but that's just my perspective.
I mean, I think the program we have, there's two programs I run. I run, obviously there's this program here, which is the 6 month one, which is you guys did. There's two essentials programs, which are 6 weeks, which don't come with an internship. But we also do have a Numensa internship program where we place people into internships for a 12-week period, 2 or 3 days a week. And you can do that whilst you're studying, and people do,
Mhm.
but it would be difficult to do that and be studying and working somewhere else. I think that's what I would say. Um, but it really does depend on how many, contact hours you've got and how probably organized you are, or if you have other responsibilities as well. Um, the last time around, so the time after you guys, we had somebody who was a mum, worked 4 days a week and did our program, and the internship, and managed absolutely fine. So yeah, I mean the program is designed, this program is designed for people who are job changers, not people who are school leavers. It's designed for people who are job changers and are wanting to do this in a short, sharp period whilst they're working or whilst they're doing something else. So it isn't, I mean, I don't know what you find, the coursework isn't that onerous, is it? What do you think? Did you find it, I mean, you were both working at the time and doing your
Yes,
internship.
I was working in retail at the moment, and I find it quite balancing, to be
Yeah.
honest, because there is enough content and it's not, you know, a lot of going on, and as I was saying, during the internship, you get to observe and learn more than to have the responsibility to actually deliver, metrics and you know things like that. So I think that yeah, as long as you can balance yourself in terms of your hours and what you're doing, I feel like it's possible. Just have to be mindful, right,
And
of
I
your
have
capabilities.
recently worked in the higher education and TAFE sector with RMIT, and one I was putting this program together. The reason why it's not an accredited program is I didn't want to have to go down that path where you have to follow these things that are prescriptive that aren't necessarily what the industry needs. So everything that is in the program is what you absolutely need to know. I haven't put stuff in there to pad it out, or that because we have to follow academia. It's the stuff that you're going to need. It's taught in a way that this is the skill that you need to understand. This is what it is. This is why it's done. This is how you do it. And so what? Now you can do a practice, and here's your assessment and whatever else. So I would say that's it's quite a condensed study program as well. So, how likely would it be to find a paid internship? So, I would say impossible. I'll be really honest with you.
It's really
And you've got to remember two things. When you're an intern, you're there to learn, and yes, you'll be doing some stuff, but you're really not that productive for the organization. And in fact, what you are is you are actually taking time away from somebody that they are employing, because that person has got to spend time with you, they've got to train you, um, and, you know, explain everything to you. You're shadowing, you're following things around. Yes, you're getting some stuff to do, but like, you know, Kathy did, it was done, then she presented it, but then it had to be checked. It wasn't as if, you know, it was, oh, we'll just give you a task to do it. So you're not doing the role of that a paid employee would do. And for that, and particularly at the moment, because, you know, we're in a very tough trading period, companies don't have the money to pay an intern, and I think that you have to be really realistic about that. Okay, going to fashion merchandise research, trying to get as much as possible. So yeah, I mean, Yana, if you're doing something else and you're covering that, we do take people. I'm just about to place somebody now through the New Mentor Internship Program, who actually had done the degree at RMIT, graduated, and I think, fingers crossed, we've got her into a fantastic internship in Sydney. So she's going to do the internship because, again, you know, she's got the theory behind it, but she hasn't got the experience, and you really do need sort of both. And it's a sad fact of life that you need the experience to get experience. And, you know, it was the same when I first started my career in 1987, and it hasn't changed, and I don't think that's likely to change. You do need experience to get experience, and if the way to do that is from an unpaid internship when you're just there, you know, it's I think it's investment in your future, is what I would say. Does anybody else have any questions? Oh, I've got one here. How do you get into the industry without studying? Do you need to start in a retail position? What I would say, Clarissa, is that some of the best buyers I've ever met have come from stores. They really have a great understanding of when the buyer makes or the planner makes a decision, how is that decision going to impact what happens in stores? And they also have a great understanding of the customer. And one of the things that I think is a difficult one to come to terms with, particularly if you come straight out of uni, is that you're not buying and putting together a role. You're not planning a range for you. It's for your customer, and it really doesn't matter whether you would wear it or you wouldn't wear it. You know, I've put things in a range that, quite frankly, I wouldn't be seen dead in, but they have been bestsellers because they are right for the target customer, and it's what that customer is looking for. And I think that people who've worked in retail get that. They get what the customer's looking for. They're able to put themselves in the mind of the customer, and I think that's really, really important. However, what I would say is, you don't necessarily have to have a degree, but any formal study, such as our program that you can do, will also help you, because you'll get the theory behind what you need to do if you want to get into buying or planning. Anything else? Anybody else got any questions? I can hear something. Maybe it's just sound. Okay. Working in luxury retail has taught me to put myself in the customer's. Yeah, but it's a great. But you have to put yourself in the customer's shoes. It's not about what you want or like, and it's what's really interesting as well is value is an interesting one. Price is an interesting one. Is that oh, thank you, Vanessa. Vanessa has said she would recommend this course 100%. She's one of our current students, so that's lovely. Thank you, Vanessa.
Me too.
So, you know, it's really interesting, you know, people who, and I'll give you two examples. One, some years ago when I worked at Marks and Spencer and I was at the level of Dulcie, I was an assistant buyer. I was with a meeting with design, and they were talking about doing cashmere. And they wanted to put cashmere in the range. Now, in London and in certain stores in the UK, like Bath or whatever, where you have like a higher socioeconomic profile, yes, you could sell cashmere. But in many working class areas, in other areas, and I'm from the northeast of England, you probably weren't going to be able to sell a lot of cashmere. And um, it, the designer just had this idea because she was very London centric. And that's the other thing that I see a lot within Australia is when I work and I do a lot of training with buyers and planners in organizations and other retailers, if they're Melbourne based, they are completely Melbourne focused. And if they're Sydney based, they're very Sydney focused. And if they're Brisbane based, they forget that the weather is very different. This is a continent and it has very different weather, and people have very different lifestyles. And you can't, it's not a one size fits all in terms of what's going to sell in one part of the country to another part of the country. And that's another thing to bear in mind, that what is the lifestyle of a customer? What are they going to be doing on a day-to-day basis? And, you know, I'm in Melbourne, it's almost summer. I'm wearing a long sleeve dress. And you know what? I've got a window open. And I probably should have closed it before I started this because there's a cold breeze. And yet, Dulcie, you're in Brisbane. You're probably going to tell me it's 32 degrees.
Right now we had a really wet week, so it's been cold actually.
Oh, what is it? What is it? 28?
Let me see myself. Yeah, 23.
Oh, okay, 23.
Oh,
But it is, you know, you know, you do have to be, you know, weather is important, and so is, you know, the geography and lifestyle. So he only wants to know what tips for buying sustainably and keeping wastage minimized. Well, I would say that Australian fashion retailers are way, way behind where the rest of the world is, and particularly in Europe, partly from the European Union has the European Union had put an awful lot of pressure, and I think, you know, countries like Sweden, the Scandinavian countries. So a lot of retailers moved quite quickly and quite far in terms of sustainability journey. Australian retailers are now having to catch up, and particularly with Gen Z, and again, to understand a new customer, millennials and older millennials not so interested in sustainability. Younger millennials or Gen Y and Gen Z, sustainability very important, and that is something that I think, you know, buyers and planners have to get the grips around more, and retailers have to as well. Anything happening with your companies on the sustainability piece?
Well, on my side, because I work with Sunnies, I will say that majority of our suppliers are using, recyclable materials. So my advice or tip in terms of that will be that to choose the right supplier, right? To know that your supplier, um, has X and Y certifications, know where the product comes, all the materials. So yeah, just get to know the supplier and choose the right supplier. In terms of sustainability, I feel like will be kind of the way to go. Um, but the trends, are also changing day to day. So you have to keep up to it. So yeah, reading a lot about trends, or looking at the fashion shows and see what is happening around the world is really, really important.
Okay, so we're just about at the end of our hour. So if anybody has any more questions, we could probably squeeze one more in, but otherwise we may need to leave it there. Anybody got another question?
You're welcome.
All right. Okay. Um, well, I'd just like to say, Kathy and Dulcie, thank you so much for your time today. So any tips and questions we should focus more on when networking with people within the industry? So I'm going to over to you guys. What do you think about networking? Any tips or questions we should focus more on when networking with people within the industry?
I will just give you probably an advice. It's just people are just people, so you can just talk to them, right? So don't be afraid, have confidence. If they don't respond back, that's okay. Go to the next one. Yeah, people are just people. Don't be afraid. They won't bite you. Just try to interact with them with whichever you find interesting, try to do it. If they don't want to engage with you, that's all right as well. Go to the next one and move on. You know, just try.
And I'd absolutely, say that, you could go to LinkedIn, find people who are buyers, maybe it's a brand that you really love, and then go onto LinkedIn, put the brand name in, see who works for them, reach out to them and just say, hey, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'd like to do. I see you're based in Sydney, I live in Sydney, is there any chance we could have a coffee? You'd be really surprised how many people are really keen to bring on the younger generation and to help other people. I did a call, a mum phoned me, her daughter's 15. She wanted some advice for her daughter. We set up a Teams call. I gave her advice, it's, an advice on what she needs to do, how she needs to think about things. She's only 15, she's got a long way to go. People are really, I think you're absolutely right, Dulcie. People will help. People will give you advice, and they'll, you can maybe say, "Can I come in and watch you for an afternoon?" Whatever it is. People will, if they can, they can, and if they can't, they won't be able to. But I think LinkedIn is probably a really good starting point. Okay, well, I think that's all we've got time for, so I need to wrap it up there. Dulcie, thank you so much. Kathy, thank you so much. And if I don't get to speak to you before, have a fantastic Christmas. And let's hope we have a nice, hot, warm summer, especially in Melbourne. And
Yeah.
to the audience, thank you very much for joining us. I will be putting the recording up, and I'll send an email out with the recording as well. Okay,
Okay.
thanks
Thank
very
you,
much.
guys.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.